Well, Taoiseach, with Brexit on the horizon and the possibility of a no-deal exit by the UK from the European Union in a little over 6 weeks' time, it's vital that the public finances are strong enough to support the emergency measures that may be needed to preserve jobs in this economy. Last year, your government moved €1 billion from the Strategic Investment Fund to the Reserve Fund for Exceptional Contingencies, the Rainy Day Fund. The government also pledged to put an additional €500 million into the fund this year. Can you confirm that at least €1.5 billion will be available to support jobs in the event of a no-deal Brexit? There would presumably be more money available if it wasn't for the mishandling of the funding of the National Children's Hospital, Metro and rural broadband and so on. But the time has come for the government to give clarity in relation to the specifics of Brexit preparations. I've been speaking, I've said this publicly, I said at the Stakeholders Forum during the week, to trade union officials across the country during the summer. In manufacturing industries, we've been focused on the agri-foods and the tourism sector, but in manufacturing, right now, right today, the lack of certainty about Brexit is leading to visible downturn in businesses. Important regional employers, with employing hundreds of jobs in each factory, are under pressure. It's reported to me that orders are reduced, overtime has been cancelled, and in some circumstances, temporary workers let go. So the impact of Brexit has been felt now, today. It was reported that official estimates of 10,000 jobs would be lost in tourism and hospitality. The British government, as you know, was forced by the British Parliament to publish its Yellowhammer report on the possible effects of Brexit right across the British economy. Do you think now, Taoiseach, it's time for your government to publish its own detailed, clear analysis in every sector of our economy of a hard Brexit? How many jobs are at risk in manufacturing if the UK does leave in 6 weeks' time without a deal? How many other jobs across each sector of the economy are at risk? We need to know how much money we can deploy to sustain jobs in the short or medium term during this crisis. How much money will be available from the European Union in the event of a no-deal Brexit in 6 weeks' time? So, very clearly, Taoiseach, I'd like you to address these in a very open way. How will money be made available to support vulnerable jobs? How much money, and much of it will come from Europe and from our own resources, and how will it be delivered?
Thank you, Deputy Howlin.
Deputy, I appreciate that for the next 3 weeks I'm going to be asked questions about what's in the budget, and I hope everyone in this House will appreciate that the answer is going to be you'll find out on budget day, because the budget is yet to be agreed. It needs to be discussed between ministers, needs to be discussed with Fianna Fáil as the constant supply partners to the government, and of course it needs to be discussed at Cabinet. So the only answer I can give people on what's going to be in the budget in 3 weeks' time is you'll find out on budget day, because it'll only be signed and sealed that morning. However, what I can say is that the public finances are in a strong position. 2 years ago, when I became Taoiseach, our public finances were in deficit. They're now in surplus. We're one of the few countries in the world to record a budget surplus. They don't have one in the UK, don't have one in America, don't have one in France, but we are in surplus. We've also reduced the national debt considerably as a percentage of GDP in that period. In relation to a document equivalent to Yellowhammer, we don't have such a document, but we have produced all that information already. It's there in the Brexit contingency plan document we published in July, the one in December before that, in the summer economic statement, and also in detailed analyses published by government, done by Copenhagen Economics, the SRI, and indeed the central bank. So all those figures are available and have been for some time. We never had a Yellowhammer type document that we hid from people. We published information all along the way. The budget is based on an assumption that no deal is a real possibility on the 31st of October. That doesn't mean that we necessarily believe that's going to happen. We will work for a deal until the very last moment to secure a deal, but we won't do so at any cost. But we think the prudent thing to do is to prepare the budget with a pessimistic scenario, and that is one for no deal. So the budget will prepare us for no deal. On Budget Day, we'll publish details of the package that will be available to business to support those businesses and those jobs that are viable but are vulnerable as a consequence of Brexit, and it will be a substantial package. We don't yet know how much will come from the European Union and how much will come from our own funds. Some will come from the European Union. I expect most will come from our own funds, but again, that's not determined or decided yet, but you will know as soon as we know for sure. But I think it is worth pointing out that we have put a lot of things in place already. A €300 million low-cost loan to businesses to allow them to prepare for Brexit. A future loan scheme made available as well to businesses to allow them to adapt. And a €200 million approved restructure and rescue fund with approved state aid clearance from the European Commission to allow us to support those businesses who need it. And you're right in your question. There hasn't been an enormous take-up by business of these schemes as yet, because they haven't need to take them up as yet, but they may need to, and that's why it's important they are there.
Deputy Howlin.
Dáil Éireann hasn't been prorogued, so we will be asking questions, and we expect, unlike some of what's happened across the water, to get very clear and accurate answers. The preparation for a no-deal Brexit, I think all of us in this House understand, certainly those workers across the country and employers across the country understand, is not a normal annual budgetary issue. We need to know what you will deploy in terms of our reserves. We have strategic reserves in this country to ensure that the task of preserving jobs, which is far more useful than the task of trying to replace jobs through this difficult period, is understood. And that means drilling into every industry to know where the jobs are today vulnerable, what they might need. And bluntly, the sums you've talked about are paltry in the context of what will be required in the event of a no-deal Brexit. And secondly, we need to know, as I say, on a workplace-by-workplace basis, what are the pressures, what will be required, because many of these companies are not going to apply for loans because they can't afford to provide for their demands right now, rather than add up debt. That's not the solution. So I just want a clear indication from you, Taoiseach, that you understand the scale of what will be required in the event of a no-deal Brexit, and that you've well planned for that. You understand where it is to be deployed, how it is to be deployed, and how much resources will come from Europe to help us.
Thank you, Deputy Howlin. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. You'll know the answers to those questions on the same day that I know for sure, because the budget won't be signed off on until the Cabinet meeting on the morning of the 8th of October, and we will present that budget to the House that very day. But I think we're on the same page here. I would rather be in a position where the country is borrowing money to save people's jobs than borrowing money to pay the dole. And if that's what we have to do, well, then that's what we will do as part of the budget. But I need to be honest with people as well. If we end up in a no-deal scenario, it will be damage limitation. And there may be some jobs that can't be saved and some businesses that regrettably can't be saved. But we will put together a package that will be significant, that will be meaningful, and will allow us to save those jobs and businesses that are viable in the long term, but have been made vulnerable as a consequence of Brexit.
Taoiseach, Deputy